Good evening, YouTubers. Welcome to episode 60 of Shrigleytube TV. It's been a fairly steady week at work, got a bit done, so that was good. Videoed it, hope you enjoy what you see. Thanks for everyone that makes a comment, that's all great. A couple of dates for your diary if you fancy it. The most important weekend of the year is coming up, which of course is Skegness, which is the Brisker F1 Stock Car World Final. It starts on the Friday night with the overseas meeting, and then they have a big race on Saturday, and you can do a pit walk, etc. And then on Sunday they have like another full race meeting. So it's a full weekend of stock cars if you fancy that. That's on the weekend of the 14th of September, so we're looking forward to that. I'll do a full video from there. Hopefully you'll enjoy it, and maybe go and watch the stock cars and support them one day. Also, we've got the November, I think it's like the 8th of November or 5th to the 8th of November, the NEC Classic Car Show. I'll be there doing a auto jumble stand, so if you want to buy a t-shirt or come and say hello and maybe have a small interview, then we'd love to see you there. Right, hope you enjoy what you see, and I look forward to seeing you all next Sunday at 7. Have a great week. Okay, good morning, YouTubers. Back from my holidays, straight back into it, and I thought, what was I up to when I left? And I remembered I was on the 930 conversion, the prototype one. So this is the engine, if you remember from last week, or the week before, sorry, where we took a fire pump or upright 930cc imp engine and measured the compression ratio, etc., and decided that it was a little bit on the low side for what we wanted to do with it, because we want a really nice torquey low down grunt imp engine. So it's a brand new engine, just for those of you that have just joined me now and not seen before. So there's all the brand new parts out of the head. All I've done is I've basically whacked about 100th hour material off the head on an angle. So what I've done is I've took more off this side than this side, so that it takes it off the deepest side of the chamber, and hopefully it increases the compression ratio. We're aiming for roughly, I reckon it's going to be between 10 and 10.5 to 1, but we'll bolt it on and CC it together in a minute. Now also, if you remember from the video, I did whinge a bit about the state of the finish on the ports. So I didn't go crazy. I just sorted that short turn out there. It was all like edgy, if you know what I mean. So I've just run the rotary carbide round there to deburr it a little bit, help the air get around the corner nicely, because that's called the short turn, and it's quite nice on an imp sport head with an imp sport valve. It goes a bit nasty when you put a big valve in, but on the standard head it's okay. Right, so what I was going to say was, I bought a bung, had a measure of this morning. Oh, I'll just zoom out. So we discussed last time how I'm going to put a thermostat housing in the standard position on like it is on the imp. We don't use this pipe, but we normally have two pipes on an imp. So that one's going to be the original bypass hose. This is going to be drilled and tapped 5/8 UNF, so we can put the temp sender in it. And then this one is the one that goes off to the heater matrix. It's normally on an imp, it sits about here, but it sits about here, but we've moved it to there, so where we had some land. So that's all sorted out, and obviously because we've skimmed the head on the angle to get the compression ratio up, I've also re-spot faced and re-drilled all these holes, so that if you can imagine, because the head's been skimmed on the wedge, instead of the holes being straight, they're slightly cocked. So we have to re-straighten them and re-spot face them. Otherwise the head bolt and the washer doesn't sit straight on the where it mounts there. So done all that. We'll get it bolted on the engine and measure the compression ratio and go from there. Okay chaps, just about to pull the head on, and I've just got a bit excited and thought I'd better make a video about this, because it is one of my absolute pet hates. And that is, you may recall I made a big song and dance about the original head bolts. When I pulled them out, they were just dry as a bone, no lubrication and whatsoever. So we've got some special slippy stuff, some assembly lube, ARP here, and as you can see, I've liberally applied it onto the threads. But the most important thing I want to say is, make sure you put it under the shoulder of the bolt where the washer sits, because when you torque the head down, if you can imagine the amount of friction between the back of the head of the bolt and the washer, it's quite significant, and it can affect the torque reading. And I don't know if you've ever been, like, you won't see it anymore because no one takes engines apart in garages, but years ago when you used to walk into garage forecourts and lads working on engines, you'd hear them doing like the final 90 degrees on a head bolt torque, and you'd hear the bolt go ding, 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 ding as they tightened it, and I just think, he's put that in dry. Horrendous. Why haven't it been torqued properly? Anyway, I'm over myself now. I've got everything lubed up, so we'll get these bolts in, torqued up, and we will check the compression ratio. Right, okay, I've got the head on and torqued it all down to 40 foot-pound. That all torqued beautifully, and I've just put the cam and timed it up, etc. And I thought we'll measure the compression ratio. So I made sure both valves were shut and the piston was at top dead center, so that would be about to go bang and fire. And what I've done is I've filled it with kerosene inside a burette. So I've measured how much fluid has gone in at top dead center to the bottom thread of the spark plug hole, and the figure I got was 27.4 cc's. So it's a little bit more than I was anticipating, I will be honest. If we work it out now, dead simple, we've got a 930cc engine, and we want to know what one cylinder will be. So divide it by 4, and that gives us 232.5 cc's in that number one cylinder. So to find the ratio out, we know that the cylinder at TDC has got 27.4, so we go plus 27.4 equals that figure divided by 27.4 to give us 1, and that gives us 9.48 to 1. So I was obviously with my calculations last, or 2 weeks ago, if you remember, I did the little calculation to decide how much 80 thou off the head 2 millimeters was going to give us in reduction in cc's, and I reckoned it was going to give us 10 to 1 compression, but I've obviously got that a little bit out. So we are where we are. So 9.48 to 1, it's not high, but like I said before, these engines I'm running with the standard cam, which is you know, it's basically somewhere between a Mark II imp cam and an imp sport cam. It's very, very mild. It's only got 250 thou of lift. Ideally I'd put a sport cam in because I love a sport cam. I think they're a great cam, but I want to supply the engines as a completely brand new unit, and I haven't got new sport cams, whereas as you can see these are absolutely brand fire new. So I just want to leave it, and when we dyno it in a bit, what you'll see is what I'm trying to create is, I'm not trying to create a race engine. I want an engine that does all of its torque at 1500 RPM, 2000 RPM, 2.5, so you can drive it around town real nice, you know, loads of torque, go up a hill, no problems, and it'll still maintain 80 mile an hour if you need it to on the motorway. Anyway, so it's 9.5 to 1. So what I've just done, you know, we always talk about compression ratio, and I won't get into an Andy mega waffle, but what I'll say is, we always talk about on a race engine like 12.5 to 1 compression static. So that is the measurement of the piston from bottom to top, that cc's plus what's in the chamber divided by what's in the chamber, and it gives us that ratio of 12 to 1 static. But there's also something called dynamic compression ratio, which is basically what the engine sees. So that means at bottom dead center, which is where we are now. So at the moment, these two pistons are at the top and these two pistons are at the bottom. So what's going to happen in the next 180 degrees of rotation, the piston is going to squash the air in the cylinder because both valves will be shut, and then these two lobes will be at the top, and that's what we call number one cylinder firing. Now, the reason I'm just showing this is because I've got my torch. We have something called overlap on the cam, and the dynamic compression ratio takes into account from when the valve shuts. So at the moment, the inlet valve, if I put a torch there and we go to the inlet here, you can just see he's open about 30 thou. Not a lot. On a race engine, that would be more like 170 thou. But on this road going engine, and we have to do this because of when we've got speed into effect, it all changes everything, but we're not going to go into that now. So what I'm going to say is, before that comes, if you look, you'll see the cam is on lift there. We will be able to travel on the bottom pulley. I'll zoom right out so you can see. By the time that comes off lift, I reckon we'll have travelled a good 10-15 degrees on the bottom pulley, and the piston will have moved up the bore probably, I don't know, maybe let's just say for the sake of argument 2 centimeters. So now what we've got effectively it's now squashing because the valves are shut, but the cylinder is shorter than before. So if we remeasured it, I know it was 232.5 cc's as a 930cc engine, but if it's travelled that much, if it's travelled 2 centimetres, it might only measure 800 cc's now. So the actual squashing time is less, so the dynamic compression ratio is less. But the point of this mega waffle is, because the cam is so mild, it won't be as badly affected by the fact it's only starting out with 9.5 to 1, because it's static and dynamic. It still might have 9 to 1 dynamic because the cam's so mild. So I'll leave it at that before I tie myself in a complete knot. What we'll do is we'll put it on the dyno and we'll see if we can get, what would be really nice is the standard imp had, I think, had 40 foot-pound of torque. If we could get like 55, 60 foot-pound out of it, that would be amazing. That would be, I'm not worried about power figures. We're not going to be able to do any RPM of it. I want to put a Solex carb on it and a sport exhaust, and I want to make a nice road-going, high-torque engine. Right, we've been building the engine up, and as you can see, it's nearly ready to go on the dyno. So I've got the imp sump on it now, opposed to the upright sump. I've got the standard sport exhaust manifold, which is quite a small bore, but they're fine for like an 875 or 930. And I've got a completely standard 875 Solex carb. I love these carbs. They don't smell, they're good on fuel. Despite the look of the manifold, it actually works very well. And yeah, Solex carb, they have a bit of an issue with the fuel pipe between the float chamber here and the carburetor. Little rubber pipe there. Always replace that, because they can split and then it drops fuel onto the exhaust. The other thing that's a problem with them is normally the connector that goes in here is pushing, and over time they can get damaged and they can work their way out. So I just drill and tap it and put a 1/8 MPT thread in it, and then you can buy these 1/8 MPT hose tails off the internet and off eBay and just screw it in there. Definitely a worthwhile mod, that, because if it comes out, it's a fire hazard potential. So this is the standard fuel pump off the 930. It's slightly different offsets, and it requires to run with a heat plate, which is like a sandwich insulator that stops the heat from travelling up the engine into the pump and boiling the fuel. Something that imps can suffer with when they've got the fuel feed pipe selection. Basically, people put the fuel filter here because it's an easy place to put it. So you've got your fuel from the engine, from the tank, coming in into a filter and into the pump. And what happens is all this heat radiates when you stop in the services, and it boils the fuel in the filter. So never put your filter there. Always relocate it over by the battery somewhere so that it doesn't boil the fuel, because what happens is it sends a massive airlock. When the fuel boils, I think it boils at like 70 degrees or something, petrol, it puts a massive vapor lock all the way back to the tank. So then you can never, it starts up and then uses what it's got in the float bowl, and then runs out of fuel and end up breaking down. Normally on a slip road. That's what happened to me anyway. So I'm hoping we can get away with running the brand new pump off the Talbot Sunbeam 930. It should be a 2 psi, because obviously it was to feed originally a single Stromberg. So all that should be the same. So we've got that. The only difference is, of course, it's on 8mm tails rather than 6, but that doesn't matter because we're on an 8mm tail anyway. So right, before I forget what I was going to say, the back of the engine, if you've ever done a conversion before, because this is my prototype crankshaft that I did, where I drilled the holes in the wrong place for the dowel, so hence we've got an extra set of holes that have been bunged. But you can see these webs just slightly potential of catching the back of the flywheel. So I'm going to get a flat pad on a grinder and just trim these back a little bit. I've resealed the rear main cap, obviously, when we changed the crankshaft. I have made, this was, what did I say it was it 3/4 MPT. I found a tap, or I looked in the Zeus book and found something that would go in there without having to machine it. So I just tapped into the hole so that we could get the temp sender in. So I bought these bosses and I've drilled and tapped that 5/8 UNF. So now we can screw that in there, like that. So normally this will be positioned here on the imp. So that's there, that's your bypass. And then obviously this is the extra pipe that I've put in that would normally be here on the imp, and that one's going to go to the heater pipe at the front. I want to make it so when I put it in the Husky, it just plumbs up exactly as standard. Now, you might remember me saying a couple of weeks ago, there's no index in the back of the head for the the thermostat. This is a new 74-degree stat from the Imp Club. I love a 74. Just gives you that little bit of a margin, you know, on a hot day. So quite crudely, I've just put the thermostat housing in a 3-jaws chuck, and I just basically machined an index so that the thermostat sits low and it sits central. So yeah, so it goes that way around. So that now will bolt on there like that, and that will be exactly the same as an Imp now. All the pipes same as an Imp, so we're rock and rolling. Right, I'll get this on the dyno and we'll get a tune out of it. Right, okay, I was about to bolt the engine on dyno and I suddenly remembered that I'd not drilled the starter motor holes. So this is the Talbot Sunbeam starter, and basically these holes here are ever so slightly further apart, but this index diameter is the same. So if we offer it up, it goes in perfect and it all works perfect. So I've used these before many a time. In fact, I'm going to run it with this one now. However, the holes are in the wrong place. So what we do is, this is an Imp bell housing that I've just took from a gearbox that I had blasted. It locates on 2 dowels, one here and another one down here. So make sure your dowels are in. This is if you come to do this yourself, so that the gearbox locates properly. And all I've done, real simple, should really do this on the radial drill, but as the engine's built up, I'm just going to use the socket. I'll show you that in a minute. So I've just basically gone in and I've marked the end of the bell housing where the holes should be. So you can see now, that's where the hole should be for the Imp, and that's the hole that's for the Talbot Sunbeam. So we're going to re-drill these 2 holes now, and I want to go through how to do it and keeping it straight whilst not actually on a milling machine or on a radial drill. It's quite simple. Right, okay, I'll go through it now. Basically, the danger of drilling freehand like this is that, exaggerated, we go on the smash like that, and we end up with the hole not coming out straight out the other side. So what we use is basically just a 16mm, well, this is just an old socket. It could be any old socket. I like a long series socket, and I've basically drilled out the hole in the middle of it so that my my 11mm drill goes through. So all I've got to do is hold the, I'm just resting this on my stomach, it's not very professional for the camera, but if I hold that hard against the end of the bell housing, against the aluminium, basically as long as the drill is in the centre of that hole, I know that the hole is going to continue to go straight and come out the other side without wandering, because it's using this as a guide. So keeping it central here and keeping that hard against the aluminium there means it has no choice but to go dead straight. I'll do with this hole now and show you. Okay, that's the first hole drilled. So if you look, because we used the socket, he stayed totally parallel to the original hole and not wandered anywhere. What I'll do next is the bottom hole, which is just a pilot at the moment, and then I'll put the starter motor on with some mole grips, and we'll drill through the starter motor as well. So we've gone the whole lot then. Good morning, YouTubers. We're on the dyno now with the 930. It runs sweet as a nut. We're going to dyno it together in a minute. I'm really pleased with what it's doing. I thought we'd better start in here and go through a few things. So it's the new 930 engine with the new Dizzy. I don't normally bother with VAC Advanced because it's normally all worn out and knackered, but because it's all brand new, I thought let's attach it and see how it behaves, and it seems to be doing exactly what it says on the tin, which is good. I've fitted the Talbot Sunbeam starter motor as well, just elongated the holes. Obviously that's been re-drilled in the bell housing to suit the Imp gearbox now, because that is an Imp bell housing on the dyno that we use. So I'm using the AB14 Lucas type ignition system, which is a ballast coil. I assume that's like a 9 volt, or it's a 12 volt, but it's be a 1.5 ohm that, and it runs with this nice ballast resistor. So I've got this loom and module, AB14 module. I might as well use it, you know, and put it in to good use with all the engines that I sell. So that's the module. You might recognise it. It normally lives on the inner wing of a Lotus Sunbeam or a Sunbeam Talbot 1.6, 1.3 or 1 litre. I've mounted it this way because the epoxy in the back has melted, so when it's getting warm, you can see it's going shiny. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hopefully it'll level out by the time I finish dynoing it, and I'll put some silicone across the back so that it never dribbles out again. Because if you're familiar with these units, you might remember when they're mounted vertically on it in a wing of a Talbot Sunbeam, all of the silicone dribbles out the bottom of them, or it's resin of some type, I'm not quite sure what it is. Now, things I have noticed is the Dizzy, I'm going to try and move it all around 90 degrees because that will foul the alternator. So we might have to make a note to move the peg drive around, you know, the skew gear on the crankshaft. When I've got the sump off, putting the imp sump on, just take the oil pump out and move it round a tooth so that this doesn't interfere with the alternator bracket. So that's something we need to look at for the future. I'm going to shorten these leads as well and put new 90 degree ends on them because they're all a bit long. These are the leads that come with them and they're really nice. I like a genuine champion lead. So we'll put some 90 degree ends on that and tidy it all up. We'll do all that after we've run it. Now I'm also running the original Talbot Sunbeam fuel pump. It's got like it's very similar design to the imp one, but it's got 8mm tails rather than 6. Now I have actually used 6mm pipe on it just to see if it would work, and it goes over no problem on the 8mm. I mean it's only like just under 2mm bigger, so you can use the 6mm pipe no problem. It's also it runs cool because it's got a little absorber between the pump and the cam cover, which is good. I've run a standard imp Solex, totally standard, not modified in any way, apart from the little tail that I went into the other day about I drill and tap them so that they can't fall out. And we've got an imp Sport exhaust system on it. It seems to be doing quite well. Obviously this is all my modified end. That will go off to the inner wing, to the front, to the heater matrix. That one will be a bypass, but on this setup I've got it going back to the header tank because we've got a thermostat here, so when the water comes up the engine it can't run up this pipe, which will be the normal return pipe to the header tank, so we have to put a bypass in for when it's shut. That's why that pipe goes up to the top of the tank there. So everything seems to be working absolutely spot on. The engine is really sweet in that because the cam's so mild, it idles absolutely lovely. It's so noisy, the drive shaft, that it ruins the effect. So what I'll do is after we've dynoed it together, I'll pull the engine forward off the flywheel mount and we'll just run it and see what it sounds like. Now one thing that really did interest me was I've stood next to it and held it at peak torque and given it the dizzy swing to see what it wanted, and then I put a timing light on it and I was really shocked to see that it only wanted 33 degrees max at 2,500 RPM. Now I thought being like 9.5 to 1 compression it'd want loads of advance to make it burn properly, but I think because the chamber shape is so good on the 930 head, you know, with no dead areas or less dead areas, with it having a smaller squish band, I think it's helping the efficiency of the burn because it just didn't want any advance, not compared to a stand. You know, if I had a standard imp engine on here, an 875, and crikey, you can run like 45-50 degrees no problem. Anyway, we'll stop waffling and we'll run it together and see what we see. Okay, we're on the dyno now with the 930. I've set the camera to 4K, so hopefully you can see the numbers on the dyno in the top of the screen. It's really torque. It doesn't do any horsepower. I think it does about 50 horsepower, but it does exactly what I wanted it to do, really. So I can't wait to get it in the Husky and see how it performs. But it's all about the torque down at like idle and just past. If that excuse the drive shaft rattling, I'll try and get the drive shaft to be quiet, and I'll hopefully we'll be able to bring the dyno the load up on it and bring it back down the RPM range so I can show you. Right, the shaft stopped rattling now, so I'll start loading it up and we'll just see what it's got at like 2,500 RPM. Just part throttle at the moment there, and it's doing like 55. Now it is quite a good air day today. It's 1,012 millibars, so if I go wide open at 3,000 RPM, 63 foot-pound, which is probably more like 60. So that's a good improvement over standard. I'll just try and get it to come down to 2.5 and then go wide open. So it's still got 55 at 2,000 RPM. I'm putting the load on 2,000, still got 11, 1800 RPM, it's still got 55, 1500. Yeah. So it'll be really easy to drive this. It idles at like, I've had it down to like 400 RPM just idling. The cam's so mild in it. So it does run out of puff. It's not got any horsepower. It's not the sort of thing I'm used to, but it'll be interesting to see how it is in the car, because what I want to make is an easy driver, something that's better than standard, but not a not a rever. So get the shaft to shut up. So at 3,500, it's still doing 60 foot-pound there. I'll back the dyno off and we'll see where it ends up. I think it's going to start falling off at about 4.5. At 4,057 foot-pound, 4.5, 55, 5,000, 50, 6,000. Oh yeah. So at 6.5, it's still got about 40 foot-pounds. So it's got no horsepower whatsoever. However, you know, it'll still propel it along at 80 mile an hour, that I'm convinced. But we'll follow that up, or we'll follow this work up by putting it in the Husky and seeing what it's actually like on the road. I think it'll be quite a nice little drive. Right, I'll get it disconnected so we can have a listen to the engine. Okay, I hope you can hear me. Got the engine disconnected from the drive shaft at the back, so it's not connected to the dyno, and it idles really well. Good oil pressure, obviously being brand new, but it does idle very sweetly. So I'll turn it off. All I've done since I ran it on the dyno is I've moved the dizzy round, just so that this advanced unit can't foul on the alternator. But what I will make a note is to move the skew gear inside the engine when I've got the sump and the crank out, so that it's in a better position for the future. What I was going to say was, I've also put some 90-degree ends on these leads. They were a bit long before, so I've just made them a bit neater because they used to come out the top. So put some new ends on there. I think that's about it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill this with silicone so it can't dribble out, and then we'll put it on the in the Husky and see how it drives. Okay, YouTubers, we've got a visitor today. He's brought his poorly imp engine, and we'll come to this in a minute. I'll just introduce you to Peter. This is Peter, and he's going to tell us a story about, well, I was going to say, why have you got a G15, Peter? Is it a childhood thing?
Well, I've always been a fan of the imp engine, and when we used to go to Donington and watch racing, there was always a few G15s racing in those days. And I kind of had a hankering for an imp, but then I didn't really want all the bodywork.
Yeah.
So I thought I was looking for a car, and then this one popped up, and I suggested to Chris that I looked at it. I ended up getting my daughter's father-in-law to have a look at it, and he said it was perfect. So yeah, I looked at it and it seemed to tick the box. It was MOT but not taxed. So I just drove it back from down south, and it followed me with a cloud of smoke. My brother was saying that I needed to check the oil part of the way back.
Right, okay. Well, that's where we'll come to in a minute, but what was interesting, what you told me was, what were the two stipulations that your wife said about the car?
Well, firstly, she needed to be able to get in it without too much trouble, which I think she can do, really. But it also wasn't to leak oil. So neither of which I really achieved. And she was the person that paid for the car, so
oh wow,
I was probably should have listened a bit more carefully.
Well, that's brilliant. I mean, getting the car bought like that from the wife, that's a dream come true. I wish that happened to me one day. Right, this is the engine anyway, and it's basically pretty fit, really. There's no major problems with it. We've got it apart because the piston failed. It looks like the top of the ringlanders fell off, and I think you diagnosed it quite well in saying it was very thin where the cutout at the top of that inlet valve cut out there. We zoom in, you can see, yeah, it's probably failed from there. But this type of piston, I have to say, I call these the Australian pistons, and they're a funny size. It's 73.6, isn't it? So, or 73.4 we measured it at, so probably for a 73.5mm bore, which is just slightly under 1040cc. Now, these pistons, obviously, we won't be using them again. We're going to put a set of Maynard pistons in. But I've had a look in the block, and it is a what we call a thick wall liner block. So that block will bore to 74mm, no problem, and can make you a nice 1040. So we'll push the liners out, put some fresh glue on them, give it all a good wash. It's quite clean. And obviously the damage in the head there from where the pistons failed, was it audibly quite horrible?
Yeah, we were heading towards Thirsk, Sutton Bank, so
Right.
It's a long drag,
Yeah.
and the temperature was starting to rise a bit, and I wasn't very happy that the temperature was rising, so I tried to back off. Then I got to the bottom of Sutton Bank, and about a mile from the bottom of Sutton Bank it started to make a noise.
Right.
And I think it just got a bit too warm.
Yeah, I don't. It doesn't look like there's detonation or any major heat. The piston skirts haven't picked up or anything, and the rest of the pistons all look sort of fine, you know. So I don't think it was over advanced or anything, and I think it's just literally failed through fatigue. It's just there's basically the top ring is too close to the top of the piston. If you look, there's no land there at all. It's just a bad design, and it could have all been shifted down because there's plenty of space between the rings and between the gudgeon pins. So it's just one of them things, I'm afraid. But the head will go again, no problem. What we'll do is we'll skim it, redo the wheels rings, and we're going to upgrade it to stainless steel valves and recut the seats to 1.3 and 1.125 because it has got quite nice ports on it. Blend it all in, and then it's not actually here, but we've got a single 40 on the manifold, so that'll be quite interesting to see how it all works with the sport cam. I think it'd be quite nice and talky. So brilliant. Well, thank you, Peter, for letting us interview you on YouTube. And I did want to say as well, you also when you said your name, I remembered, and you won the competition for the best sounding engine, didn't you?
One of them.
One of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Brilliant. Oh, that was it. Was a 4 of yous one? Yeah. Right. Brilliant. Thanks again, Peter. Cheers out. Okay, YouTubers, I thought we'd have a little update on what I'm up to in the workshop. So this is the 1200cc engine that I'm really excited about doing. This is a new type of engine that I've not done before, roughly based around the Dyno spec 1200, but this one has the correct rod to stroke ratio, so it's even taller because obviously putting it on a long throw crank, we have to increase the length of the rod as well to get the rod to stroke ratio to the target that we want. So I've put the spacers on. I've just been drilling through. This is the waterway basically, so if you can imagine, this is the big water jacket, but because I put these spacers on, the water can't get through. So I've drilled holes so the water will now come through all of these holes, and I've only put the water gallery in on number 1 cylinder because I started to do it and I thought, oh, I'll do a dry build, which I've now done, and get a deck height because this is quite critical, this depth, and I didn't know how much I was going to have to take off the top until I've done the final dry build now that the pistons and the rods are here. So I've done all that. I'm going to put this back on here now and clock up on the centre and machine away the tops. The reason we put this gallery at the top is because if you look at the head, although we've got water all the way around, it can only pass through here and here on all of the cylinders. So what we do is we put this recess at the top, and then as the water comes up, it gets as much contact with the surface area of the head, because if you imagine the heat's being concentrated inside the chamber here, we want to take as much of the heat away as quickly as possible. So just outside the Wills ring we'll have a full gallery of water ready to take the heat away and run it up to the thermostat housing and then off up to the radiator to be cooled, and then ready to come back on again. So that's what I've been doing with that. I'm really pleased with it. So hopefully I'm in tomorrow. It's Saturday tomorrow. I'm hoping we'll get the liners in, get it all clamped up, because we want to be getting it bored next week, and start getting it put together. Now this is something I've been doing. This is why I get nothing done in the workshop. We'll call it R&D, but my clever mate Will Parry, which I always talk about. We talked about corners and air and all the rest of it. Now, he tells me, well, I have to listen to what he says because everything he said so far has been 100% correct. So you might remember the video going back to basically a year ago when we were getting ready for brands. I machined back the head face on the miller to change the angle, so that if you look at an imp head, because the engine lies at 45 degrees, the port is almost sort of downhill, and then it goes up and it has a less bend, and then you've got the carburetor's side draft. Yeah, so what we're trying to do is we're trying to make it so that if you look, these are both the same head casting. What I've done is I've machined this face. I've actually undercut underneath the piece where the cam cover sits. It's broken through in various places. This is just scrap. This is just me messing about. I'm just going to get a bit of a learn. And then I've took one of Will Parry's brand new manifolds, and I've had to chop this bit off. I hope he's not watching because he'd go mental. But I've trimmed it so that now when we offer this manifold up, obviously we've got quite a good straight run. You can't see there because there's no light under the head, but we've got quite a nice run to the back of the port, back of the valve, which is what I was trying to achieve. So I'm going to show all this to Will and say, Will, what do you reckon? Are we on a winner or are we on a waste of time? But either way we'll get a learn, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, that's what I've been up to with all that. Then we've got the crankshafts here all waiting to get machined, but I've had to break the setup on the lathe because I've been doing other things. So you can see these ones haven't got any holes in them yet, and these ones haven't been machined yet. And that's the brand new imp crank. That's not actually a Talbot Sunbeam crank. That one's another Sunbeam crank. So got plenty on the go. I'm going to try and get the Husky engine back in tomorrow as well, so we can go for a drive in that, ready for Sunday night's video. Okay, congratulations, you've made it to the end of Shrigleytube and you're still awake. It was only a short one tonight. Hope you've enjoyed what you've seen, and I'll look forward to seeing you next Sunday at 7. Have a great week. Bye for now.